Namaste to you all. Namaste.
Namaste, Swami.
Namaste, welcome. We'll start with your prayer. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Sahana Bhavatu Sahanu Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurma amritam gamaya Aviravirmayedhi. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavi virilitam kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadaatatam bhuvi gnanti bhurida janaha. May we be protected, may we be nourished. May we strive with energy and vigor. May our study be enlightening and not give rise to hostility. Om peace, peace, peace. Lead us to truth and not to untruth. Lead us to enlightenment and not ignorance. Lead us to immortality and not death. Let the self-manifest Atman grow in me. Om peace, peace, peace. Your nectar-like words and warm and inspiring life stories, eulogized by learned sages, are indeed eradicator of shoots of ignorance. These are auspicious to hear and propitious to inculcate in one's own life. Those who take these words to the world are indeed great benefactor of the world. So we are studying Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play. Yeah. But before that, we introduce, as usual, Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play. So Sri Ramakrishna is the central figure here, and how he played this divine play, that is how he enacted it, that is the main point. Now we find two special features in Sri Ramakrishna's life. One is inspired by divine. He lives and have his being as if he is living in divine, not as if he was living in divine. But also we find an aspect of human being. So he does not discard anything. Everything has its meaning. Everything has its place. Truth may be observed in different ways. Truth has many aspects. Truth is to be taken from those standpoints also. Now, why this? Why we should try to understand the life of Sri Ramakrishna? In Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan says, Janma karma chami divyam. This is my divine birth and also my divine action. Janma karma chami divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha. That my even seemingly ordinary efforts also has something behind it. So he who knows in reality, Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjana. Leaving this body, discarding this body, when he departs, he is not subject to rebirth and again death. So this is the purpose, that this, when we contemplate the life of Sri Ramakrishna, an incarnation of God, we try to see various aspects, because these are not ordinary, these are auspicious. And these are to be meditated on. And these are to be inculcated in one's life. So we see the divine nature of Sri Ramakrishna and also manifestation of his human nature. That is also included. Why? Because we have divinity within, but we have rationality also. Should it be discarded? No, we don't discard. Rather, we include. So last time we have seen how Sri Ramakrishna used to see the signs and symptoms of devotees, human being, and used to assess accordingly. Why so? Is it only to find faults or find some qualities? No, not really. It is to help the person. It is to help the devotee so that he can progress in his spiritual pursuit. So this is that is why this both have been taken. And another point is, in this world, we see display of cause and effects. Everything has got a cause, why it happens so, and what is the effect of it. So anyway, with this introduction, we'll go back to the text. So this is important. It is important to contemplate the life of an incarnation. It is to learn from him how one act in this world and how that knowledge can be utilized in our day-to-day life. So with this introduction, let us go back to the text. Yes.
Swami, are we at number 10 or?
Okay, I'll tell you. 11.
Okay, and by the way, my internet cut out last time, but I fixed it because I'm now in.
Don't worry. Whatever happened, happened. So thus the master.
Right on. 11. The master's comment on Narendra's physical characteristics. Thus, the master told us numerous ways to determine human character by observing physiognomical signs. He considered physiognomy to be one of the means for determining human character, and he tested Narendra and all other devotees with this method to greater or lesser degrees. After examining Narendra, he was pleased and one day told him, "You have all the good marks on your body. The only defect is that you breathe heavily when sleeping. Yogis say that this indicates a short life."
Yeah, so we know this, how Narendra lived a short life of 39 years and few months. Yes, go ahead.
12. The master ascertained the inner tendencies of people. 2. By watching their trivial actions. And 3. By evaluating what those actions revealed about their attachment to lust and gold.
So first one is physical signs and symptoms. And second is his day-to-day activities, how one does even a small duty. Whatever we do, that impresses our character, and that becomes habit. When we do repeatedly, then by repetition that becomes our second nature. And the second nature that becomes our first nature. So this is important. That is why whatever we do, we should do consciously, attentively, and dedicating that to God. Yes.
The Master's second and third means of learning about human character were by observing people's ordinary behavior and thereby evaluating their mental tendencies and their degree of attachment to lust and gold. When a newcomer came to Dakshineshwar, the Master would use those techniques as he silently observed that person for a while. When he later decided to accept that man in his inner circle, he would give him various instructions and, if necessary, some sweet scolding to correct his defects. But before accepting anyone into his inner circle, the Master would decide whether to mold that person's life as a monk or as a householder devotee. That is why he first inquired of newcomers whether they were married or single, whether their family lacked any bare necessities, and whether a close relative could maintain the family if they renounced their home.
Okay, here it looks like Sri Ramakrishna is always cogitating. It's not that. He lived his life like a flow, like a, say, violin player. One plays effortlessly. And he does not play a wrong note, but with correct notes, correct cadence, everything. So it is a flow, like a karma yogi. So Sri Ramakrishna is perfected soul, and whatever he did naturally. When it was asked to Holy Mother, that Mother, did Sri Ramakrishna came to practice harmony of religion? Then Mother answered, it is not that he did it rationally, but it happened that way. And now we can find the meaning of it, of his practicing various, the cause of practicing various religions. So this happened naturally, like breathing for him. It's not rationally he was assessing, oh, he's doing this and that, and I should do this and that. It is natural in him. Yes.
13. The Master's opinion regarding young students. The Master was always very fond of students. He said, their minds aren't yet distracted by wife and children, name and fame. If they are properly trained, they can easily focus their minds exclusively on God. This is why he made special efforts to impart spiritual ideas to them. He expressed this view through various sayings. The mind is like a packet of mustard seeds. Once scattered, it's almost impossible to gather them up. Once the colored ring appears around a parrot's neck, it's difficult to teach it to say, Radha Krishna. A cow's hoof prints on unbaked tiles can easily be smoothed over, but once the tiles are baked, the prints cannot be removed. He therefore carefully questioned students who were inexperienced in worldly life to learn whether they tended towards worldly enjoyment or renunciation. He trained them for renunciation if he found them fit for it.
Examples are given so it is easy to understand. Yes, go ahead.
14. The Master observed every one of his disciples' actions. The Master did not stop at questioning a disciple to ascertain his tendencies. He also thoroughly investigated the disciple to determine how simple and truthful he was, whether he really practiced what he professed, whether he used discrimination in all his actions, and how well he understood the Master's instructions. The reader will understand this subject from the following examples.
Go ahead.
15 examples. After one young student had visited Dakshineshwar a few times, the Master asked him, "Why don't you marry?" The student replied, "Sir, my mind isn't yet under my control. If I marry now, I shall become attached to my wife and lose discrimination between right and wrong. If I ever conquer lust, I shall marry. The master understood that although the boy had a strong attraction to sense enjoyment, his mind was tending towards the path of renunciation. Laughing, the master responded, "When you have conquered lust, you won't need to marry at all." While talking to another boy at Dakshineshwar, the master said, "Can you explain this? I can't always keep my cloth around my waist. Sometimes it comes loose and drops off without my knowledge. I'm an old man and I walk around naked, yet I'm not ashamed. I've never cared whether people saw me naked, but now I notice that some people feel embarrassed, so I keep my cloth in my lap. Can you move around naked in front of people as I do?" The boy replied, "Sir, I'm not sure, but if you ask me, I can take off my cloth." But if you ask me, I can take off my cloth. The master said, "Try it. Take off your cloth, wrap it around your head, and walk around the temple courtyard." The boy replied, "No, sir, I can't. I can do it only in front of you." The master then said, "Yes, others say the same thing. They say, we aren't ashamed to take the cloth off in front of you, but we can't do so before others."
You see, that shame is one impediment in spiritual life. So, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, abhorrence or ghrina, lajja, bhoy, the hatred, shamefulness, and fearfulness. If these are there, one cannot progress in spiritual life. What he meant by this? Should one be like him? Not really. That happens naturally. It's not that you are discarding by your own will. It happens automatically, like when a leaf is dry, it drops off automatically. It's not that one tries for it. So what Sri Ramakrishna taught, Holy Mother taught the reverse way. What she said? Ghrina, lajja, bhoy. Ghrina means hatred, shamefulness, and fearfulness. Teen thakte hoy. When these three are there, then you will attain. What it means? Everything has its context. That has to be taken from that context. What Mother implied by that is one should be hateful about bad ways, wrong thoughts. Then only one will progress in a positive way. No, I won't go that way. I'll follow this one. And a shamefulness, that it is shameful to behave in an inhuman way, discriminating way, differentiating way. Therefore, I will not do that. And fearfulness, one should be fearful about going to bad way. So that way one has to take that teaching. What Sri Ramakrishna said, that ghrina means hatred to others, that should not be there. One should not hate others. And one should not feel a little, like this is also an impediment in our life. In those days, Calcutta people were they used to feel so aristocrat that if one was drawing water from a well and somebody saw him, so he would drop that he was drawing water from a well. So because he thought, oh, what people will say, I'm a big man, I'm drawing water. So that shamefulness. So that one should not feel that way. And fearfulness, what will people say? He's afraid of people, so he cannot do good. These should be avoided. Anyway, go ahead.
16. The Ganges flood tide. We remember another incident in this connection, which occurred on a moonlit night, perhaps a couple of nights after the full moon. Shortly after we had gone to bed, the flood tide came to the Ganges. The master left his bed and ran towards the embankment, calling to us, "Come, come and see the incoming flood tide." As he watched the formerly calm and white water of the Ganges rising in huge foamy waves, moving upward with tremendous force and splashing against the embankment, the master began to dance joyfully like a boy. We had been sleeping when the master called us, so it took a little while for us to follow him, as we had to get up and fasten our cloths properly. The flood tide had passed by the time we arrived at the embankment. Some got a little glimpse of its beauty, and some did not see it at all. The master was absorbed in his own joy. When the flood tide had passed, he turned to us and asked, "Well, how did you enjoy the flood tide?" Hearing that it had moved away while we were dressing, he said, "You fools, did you think that the tide would wait for you to dress? Why didn't you leave your clothes behind as I did?"
So one should not be fastidious about how one should dress, how one looks. Most of our time goes to assess that. We stand in front of a mirror and this powder, that lipstick, that. So all these are to just enhance our appearance. So though this is very, it looks a rustic example, but that is the idea, that one should not spend too much of time mending oneself. Then the opportunity will go away from our hands. Regarding ebb tide and flood tide, that happens like when there is in a river, like when after the full moon, that happens. It is because of those who lived near the ocean can see it. It's very very nice phenomena to see and observe. We used to rejoice. Oh, see, Banasche. Yes, go ahead.
17. Perform all actions knowing that the goal of life is to realize God. Sometimes the master asked his young disciples, "Do you have any desire to marry? Will you take a job?" Some of us would reply, "Sir, I have no desire for marriage, but I will have to take a job to support myself." This answer was unreasonable to the master because he was a great lover of freedom. He said, "If you don't marry and perform family duties, why should you be a slave to someone else all your life?" His view was, give your entire heart to God and worship Him. Once one is born in this world, there is no greater duty than that. If it isn't possible to remain single, then marry, but make the realization of God your highest goal and always maintain yourself through honest means. The master felt terribly hurt if he heard that any of the disciples considered moderately or highly gifted spiritual aspirants had married or had taken a job for pay like ordinary people without any specific need to do so, or were working to achieve name and fame, wasting their energy. When he heard that one of his young disciples, Swami Niranjanananda, had accepted a job, the master told him, "It's all right that you've taken a job to support your elderly mother. If it were otherwise, I couldn't have looked at you again." When another young devotee, Junior Naren, came to see him at the Kasipur garden house after his marriage, the master grieved as if he had lost a son. He wept bitterly, throwing his arms around the boy's neck and telling him repeatedly, "Try not to forget God and sink into the world completely."
Yeah. So this looks very strange from modern perspective. That what is this that Sri Ramakrishna discouraged to get a job? Of course, nowadays it is naturally happening. Many people, they don't want to go to their duties. After this COVID, now this is a new tendency. 8 out of 10, many of them, they don't want to go back to their duties. But Sri Ramakrishna did not mean that one should be without effort, without any duties. What he meant that one should dedicate totally one's life for realization of God. If someone is not doing that, it is better to have some job. Otherwise, bad habits will creep in. Maybe he'll be addicted to drugs or anything more other than that. So mind should be occupied. Even Holy Mother used to teach that mind should be occupied performing various duties for others. What Sri Ramakrishna indicated here is slavery for money. And his mind was so tuned that right from his childhood he said, I don't want to, I'm not interested in money making or bread-winning education. Right from the beginning his mind was like that. So we have to understand from this standpoint that what he meant by that. And his effort was that his disciples or those who came to his contact, they should progress spiritually. That was his only effort. Yes, go ahead.
18. Simple faith in God and simple-mindedness are not the same. One should discriminate between the real and the unreal. Some of the devotees misunderstood the saying, one cannot make progress without faith, and in their exuberant devotion, they began to believe everything and everyone. As soon as the Master noticed this, he understood the disciples' mistakes and cautioned them. In fact, he advised all of his devotees to tread the spiritual path with faith and never to give up discrimination between the real and the unreal. We think that he meant that one should first exercise discrimination, then continue along the spiritual path. One should never try to perform worldly duties without discriminating between right and wrong.
So this is the real reason, because it is very difficult to progress in spiritual life. There are so many obstacles. And one is to get involved in the world. And as one accepts somebody's job, one becomes slave of that, whatever. But most of us, we cannot get rid of that because we have to earn our bread. From one standpoint, that's natural also, like Bhagavan Buddha said, Samya Ajiv. One should earn one's bread. And it should be righteous. So there is no harm for that. But what Sri Ramakrishna meant is it should be tempered with discrimination, viveka. Because otherwise, one becomes, it's a endless cycle, vicious cycle. The one leads to another. So that obstacle is to be avoided. That is the only point. Yes, go ahead.
Once one of his disciples, Swami Yogananda, went to the market and bought an iron pan. But instead of examining it before paying, he merely appealed to the shopkeeper's religious sensibility. After returning home, he found that the pan was cracked. When the master heard about this, he reproved the disciple. Should you be a fool just because you're a devotee of God? Do you think a shopkeeper sets up business to practice religion and that you must trust his words? Why didn't you examine the pan before purchasing it? Never act so foolishly again. When you go shopping, first determine the usual price of the item by going around to several shops. Then thoroughly examine the thing you want to buy, and don't fail to demand the little extras where allowed.
Many times we don't even examine what we have paid for and what we are carrying. So that should be done. Why? Because these are small steps to be aware. And the second, even Sri Ramakrishna is asking, like sometimes you buy two, at the cost of one you get two. So extra one you have to ask, you have to take, you not lose that one. A samadhivan purusha who is merged in samadhi all the time, he is suggesting such things. So one should not be fooled because he is a devotee. Bhakto hobi to boka hobi keno. So this is a great teaching. Even our normal day-to-day activities also should be tempered with that spirit. That is the idea. Yes, go ahead.
19. The Master advises people to be compassionate or stern according to their individual natures. Some people who enter spiritual life develop so much compassion that it eventually becomes a burden on them and even drags them down from the path of spirituality. This happens very often with men and women who have a soft nature. The Master always instructed such people to be firm and those with the opposite nature to be gentle. One of our friends, Swami Yogananda, was very mild. We never saw him get angry or abuse anyone even when there was just cause. Even though it was quite against his nature and inclination, he married merely because he could not stand to see his mother cry. Because he fell victim to his own karma, the Master's grace and reassurance saved him from his terrible despair and repentance on that occasion. The Master watched over him closely, helping him to control his excessive mildness and compassion and to perform every action with proper discrimination. How the Master trained him even in trivial matters will be clear if we cite a couple of incidents.
Yes, we'll read the incidents, but before that, when he was approached by his mother that he should marry, he said, "No, mother, I don't want." Then mother started crying, and because she was crying and she was appealing emotionally, he said, gave his assent. But he was not attending his normal married life, so his mother was upset. Again, she complained. Then he said, "Mother, I didn't want to marry, but because you started crying, so I said yes." Mother criticized him that you had desire, you are taking my sentiment as pretext. So, anyway, later Sri Ramakrishna assured him that not to worry, all the obstacles will be removed if you take refuge at the feet of God. And he assured him. So that was the incident. Yes, we'll see the other examples.
One day, a cockroach was found in a trunk in which the Master's clothes and other belongings were kept. The Master said to Yogananda, "Catch the cockroach, take it out, and kill it." But Swami Yogananda did not kill it. Instead, he took it outside the room and let it go. When he returned, the Master asked, "Did you kill it?" Embarrassed, Yogananda replied, "No, sir, I let it go." Then the Master scolded him, saying, "I told you to kill the cockroach, but you let it go. Always do exactly as I tell you. Otherwise, in more important matters later on, you will also follow your own whims and come to grief."
This is very important. One should obey his guru, his or her guru, so that By that is our training. By that we overcome many obstacles, whatever is being said. But we have so many things within us that whatever Guru instructs, we have no time to listen, number one. Even if we listen, we answer immediately, so that bubble is pricked. And the third is, then we don't practice. So, first we have to listen carefully, assess it, understand it, and then practice. So this is very important. In the life of Yogananda, these are incidents which Sri Ramakrishna showed to others also. Like this is, these are examples. And for this purpose, an incarnation brings all his companions. Otherwise, it's difficult to understand what is the fine finesse of spiritual life. And if we don't understand the finesse of it, then how can we proceed on practicing it? Go ahead.
Swami, his advice to Swami Yogananda. One day, Swami Yogananda was returning from Calcutta to Dakshineshwar by boat. When a passenger asked, he said that he was going to Rani Rasmani's Kali temple to see Sri Ramakrishna. At this, the passenger began criticizing the master for no reason. He said, Ramakrishna only pretends to be holy. He eats good food, sleeps on a cozy bed, and turns the heads of schoolboys under the pretext of religion. Yogananda was terribly hurt as he listened to this slander. At first he thought that he should rebuke the man, but his gentle nature prevailed as he thought, well, people don't know Sri Ramakrishna, so they have strange ideas about him and criticize him. What can I do? So he remained silent, leaving the man's baseless remarks unchallenged. When he arrived at Dakshineshwar, Yogananda told the master what had happened. He expected that the humble master would simply laugh at it, since he was indifferent to praise and blame, and that the matter would end there. But he met with a grave response. The master did not see the incident as Yogananda had expected, and told him, that man spoke ill of me without any cause, and you sat in silence and did nothing. Do you know what the scriptures say? A disciple should cut off the head of anyone who speaks ill of his guru, or he should leave the place at once. You didn't protest against these false accusations?
Yeah, go ahead.
21.
Next. Yeah, next to.
In a similar situation, the master has different advice for Niranjan. The following incident, which is similar to the last one, will help the reader understand how the master taught according to an individual's nature. Niranjan had a violent temper. Once on a boat trip to Dakshineshwar, he overheard some passengers speaking ill of Sri Ramakrishna for no reason. At first he protested vehemently, but the speakers ignored him. Enraged, Niranjan jumped to his feet and began to rock the boat, threatening to capsize it in midstream. Niranjan was very strong and an expert swimmer. Seeing his fury, the passengers became frightened and they begged to be forgiven. Only then did he calm down. When the master heard about this incident, he scolded Niranjan, saying, anger is a deadly sin. You ought never to let it carry you away. The anger of a good man is like a mark made on water. It vanishes instantly. Mean people say many things. If you want to fight with them, you'll spend your whole life quarreling. In such cases, think of those people as being no more than insects. Be indifferent to what they say. See what a great crime you were about to commit under the influence of anger? Think of the boatmen. You were ready to drown them too, and they had done nothing.
So now we can see, juxtaposing two incidents, how Sri Ramakrishna taught the mildness is not good, but at the same time anger is also not good. One should keep a balance. Whatever is required, one should protest, but not to to the extent to commit a crime. So this is the beauty of teaching of Sri Ramakrishna. It is like by all these incidents we can understand the character of Sri Ramakrishna more clearly. What Sri Ramakrishna is. He is encouraging the spiritual nature of his devotees, and he is discouraging to be a fool or to be too mild or to be angry. So a balance in life is very pertinent, very important. One should keep a balance in life. Keeping balance does not mean that he should commit to a wrong path. No, one should follow that, and whatever comes on that way, whatever difficulties come in that way, one should face it. Yes, go ahead.
22. An example of the Master's similar advice to a woman devotee. The advice that the Master gave to women devotees was similar to what he told men. We remember that he once cautioned an extremely soft-hearted woman in this way. Suppose a man you know takes great pains to help you on every occasion. However, you feel that this is because he's enchanted by your beauty and is too weak to break the spell. In that case, would you be gentle to him? Wouldn't you instead give him a hard kick and stay away from him forever? So you see, you can't always treat everyone kindly under all circumstances, all conditions. There is a limit to showing kindness. One should consider time, place, and person.
So this should clear our understanding how one should behave in this world. That we are to follow our path, not transgressing and stepping on others, but at the same time, if someone does it, one should be careful about one's decision. How much one should go ahead reacting, or one should not be mild, but at the same time one should stand on one's ground. Like in Florida I heard people would take, and the drop of their hat, they take their gun, and they say, I was standing on my ground. So, not like that. That is why spiritual life is like walking on a tightrope. Anyway, go ahead.
23. The story of Harish. We remember another incident in this connection. Harish was a strong young man. He had a beautiful wife, a young son, and sufficient means to support his family. But after he had visited the Master in Dakshineshwar a few times, he developed a strong antipathy to worldly life. The Master was pleased by his steadfast devotion and his simple, gentle nature, and allowed him to stay in Dakshineshwar. Harish began to spend most of his time there, serving the Master and practicing japa and meditation. Nothing could dissuade him from his purpose. His guardians began to pressure him. His father-in-law cordially invited him to return home, and his wife wept bitterly. He paid no attention to these entreaties or threats. Instead, he remained silent and went on in his own way. Sometimes the Master would draw our attention to Harish's calm and steadfast nature, saying, real men should be dead to worldly affairs while living like Harish.
Yes. Later he
24.
he was given some herbs or medicine, so he became insane, and later there was an incident in Kamarpukur. So this Harish also played a part in this drama of Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Ramakrishna's divine play. Yes, here he is shown as detached person. Yeah, go ahead.
24. This is no time to show kindness. One day, the news arrived at Dakshineshwar that Harish's family was very upset because he had given up all of his responsibilities and was engaging himself in spiritual disciplines. His wife was so grief-stricken at being separated from him for so long that she refused to eat and drink. Upon hearing this, Harish remained silent as before. To test him, the master spoke to him privately and said, "Your wife is very anxious to see you. Why don't you go to see her once? She has almost no one to look after her. What's the harm in showing her a little kindness?" Harish replied humbly, "Sir, this is no time to show kindness. If I try to be kind to my wife, I'll be overwhelmed with maya and attachment, and I might forget the main purpose of life. Pray, don't ask me to do that." This reply greatly pleased the master, and he often repeated Harish's words to us, praising his spirit of renunciation.
There is a footnote. Perhaps the master said this, that you go and see your wife, because Harish's mother was not then alive. So, with this incident, we find another incident, Hajra Mahashai. Hajra was a gentleman who used to live in front of the room of Sri Ramakrishna and used to do japa. He also did not perform his duties at home. And Sri Ramakrishna used to scold him that if you don't look after your children, why you had to beget children? Will the neighbors will look after them? So we find that here most probably Harish had that attitude, total dedication. That is why Sri Ramakrishna was protective of him. In the case of Hajra, it was hypocrisy, because within that, while doing japa also, he would contact people and do some business. Anyway, we go forward.
25. The master's advice to different people after observing their daily routines. We can mention many instances in which the master observed our daily routines and thereby understood the good and bad qualities in our minds. When he saw Niranjan eating too much ghee, he said, "My goodness, you take so much ghee. Will you one day abduct someone's daughter or daughter-in-law?" When one of us slept too much, the master was displeased with him for some time. When one of the boys got deeply involved in studying medicine, despite his disapproval, the master said to him, "You are supposed to renounce your desires, but you are increasing them instead. How will you make any spiritual progress?" We have cited many other examples in connection with other topics, so we will add no more here.
So yes, all these are incidents to show how he interacted with devotees, and his scolding was so penetrating that once a devotee heard it, could not repeat the same mistake again. So that's why that is the way he used to scold. It's not that very harshly he delivered like Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was heavy-handed. But all these are for our good. That we are to understand. So Sri Ramakrishna was like mother, but Swamiji was like father. Yes, go ahead.
26. The master observed the extent of a person's spiritual progress by determining if that person recognized the highest manifestation of spirituality in him. He did not stop at merely ascertaining his disciples' characters through the methods described earlier and by gradually correcting their defects. He often inquired how his instructions were being carried out. In addition, he adopted another means for ascertaining the spiritual progress of a particular person. This is the fourth method. When a disciple first started coming to him, the master would inquire whether the disciple's faith and devotion were increasing. To ascertain this, he would sometimes ask that disciple how he understood the master's spiritual state and manner, or the master would observe the disciple to see if he had complete faith in his words. He might also introduce this person to some intimate disciples with a similar character, so that by close association, the newcomer would develop a deep spirituality. The master was not certain of a disciple's spiritual future until he had accepted the master intuitively and of his own accord as the embodiment of the highest spiritual ideal of the world.
Yeah, he used to ask that, what do you think about me? Say he asked M. Mahendranath Gupta, the recorder of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So he asked, what do you think of me? He said, I don't understand, but it's not a small manifestation. And he was pleased. And he used to make similar associations, like as we know, Sharat and Shashi, Sharat Maharaj and Shashi Maharaj, later Swami Saradananda and Sri Ramakrishna Anandaji, both were introduced to Narendranath. And because of the association of Narendranath, their devotion to their Guru increased thousandfold, that we have already studied. So, it is the way how Sri Ramakrishna used to teach others. And one thing, assessment is very important. Like a musician can assess how you liked his music. So he's a classical music. If you understand, it was wonderful, this. And if you can talk in his parlance, then he can assess you. Or a painting, if you can appreciate the special effects or the selection of that scene, etc., etc., and depiction of highest ideal through that scene, how it is represented in that picture or that painting. That way one can assess the person. So Sri Ramakrishna used to assess his devotees like that. Yes, go ahead.
27. Why it was natural for the master to evaluate someone's spiritual progress using this method. The foregoing statement will undoubtedly surprise the reader, but a little thought makes it clear that while there is some reason to be surprised at the idea, it was nonetheless reasonable and natural for the master to act that way. Because the master realized absolutely that he embodied a unique manifestation of spirituality, he had no alternative than to behave accordingly. We have tried to explain this elsewhere in this book. The master had endured long and superhuman austerities and meditation, and he had attained samadhi, thus destroying any trace of egoism and eliminating any chance of delusion or error. He was then granted an uninterrupted memory of his past incarnations, as well as infinite knowledge, and he realized in the depth of his heart that the new spiritual ideal that was manifesting through his mind and body had never before been witnessed. So naturally, he had to believe that those who truly understood this and tried to mold their lives in the light of the ideal he presented would find their spiritual progress to be easy and smooth. For this reason, it is not surprising that he carefully inquired whether his disciples realized that he embodied the highest spiritual ideal and whether they were committed to building their lives in accordance with it.
Yeah, so like an example, Narendranath understood Sri Ramakrishna in a different way. which no other disciples could understand. And the same teachings, when Narendranath heard, he found marvelous principles depicted in the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, which other people fail to assess. So that shows that Narendranath was much advanced than others. Yeah, देखिए. So it is not that to show who is better or who is not good, but it is to show that the ideal that Sri Ramakrishna represented is very difficult to assess. And those who could assess it, that means they had that inner capacity. So this way Sri Ramakrishna used to understand the standard of that devotee. So this is very striking. I don't know any such examples. Maybe in the case of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that may be the case, but that also is not fully explained. But here we find totally explained how Sri Ramakrishna used to assess his devotees. Yeah, like we will take a little more because it is almost time. This little paragraph.
You want to go to up to 28, Swami?
No, yeah, this the master expressed.
Right. The master expressed this conviction to us in various ways. He would say, the currency during the reign of Nawab, a Muslim governor, cannot be legal tender during the reign of Badshah, a Muslim emperor. If you follow my instructions, you will reach the goal directly. Those who have reached their last birth, who have finished the repeated cycle of birth and death in this world, will come here and accept the spiritual ideas and ideals of this place. Your chosen deity is within this, pointing to himself. If you meditate on this, you meditate on your chosen deity. The reader will understand this if we mention a few examples of how the master discovered whether the above ideal was gradually gaining ground in his disciples' hearts.
Yeah. So here he also told the reason why he used to do that. Because the incarnation of Sri Ramakrishna was for the new age, when the globalization had to happen. The whole world was looking for his guidance. And that is why such ideas and ideals, the loftiest ideas and ideals should be presented. And those who could take those ideals would come to him. So it's a wonderful study of the life of Sri Ramakrishna. We'll continue next week. Next week we don't have, because Holy Mother's birth anniversary falls on 17th, so we'll have a off day on 16th. Yes.
So we have two questions. Akshay, both questions are from Akshay. The first one is, do some incarnations have greater manifestation of God than others?
Yes. It is there in Upanishad also said, Brahmavit Vara, Brahmavit Varishtha. That is why Sri Ramakrishna was praised by Swami Vivekananda as Avatar Varishtha. What is the meaning of this? Like some realized soul, they are not attached. They are indifferent to the society. But some are affectionate, they are compassionate. They want to lift the society or guide the society for the betterment. So they would say that this is the path one should follow. But one is very specific that this should be followed. Sri Ramakrishna gave an example. 3 kinds of doctors. One doctor diagnoses and he says, this is the medicine, you take it. He does not inquire whether the patient has taken the prescribed medicine or not. That's a lower kind of doctor. Middle kind of doctor would ask, have you taken the medicine, and was it giving some results or not, etc., etc. So second kind of doctor. And third is the best kind of doctor. If required, he would ride on the patient's chest and push the medicine through his throat so that it goes and works it. So Sri Ramakrishna is best kind of doctor, Bhavarog Vaidyam. So there are various categories, even in Upanishad also said, Brahmavit Vara, Brahmavit, Brahmavit Vara, Brahmavit Varishta, like superlative. Good, better, best. What is the next?
Okay, so next question again from Akshay. How can we remember God at all times? Because many people talk about worldly things and even flatter us, then one gets involved in those things.
So what we have to change our attitude. So when we talk to someone, we have to think that I am talking to God. Okay, in the beginning maybe they will do their mischiefs, but gradually they will change. I can tell you a story. One Madhav Das was a great devotee of Jagannath Mahaprabhu. So Jagannath Mahaprabhu accepted his friendship and he said that I'll come to your place to have food. So because God is coming, so he wanted to arrange everything very nicely and wanted to make some special dishes. So he went for begging because he had no money, and he gathered almost everything, and for halwa he wanted some mewa. So one lady said, I don't have mewa, but take this good. And then he wanted to go to another place, a widow's place. He said, don't go there because she'll abuse you. And that happened. He went there when he asked that, please give me some alms, I want some mewa. So not only she did not give, abused him, and he said, who are you? Everything belongs to me, I don't want to give. Even she was even infatuated with her own belongings. So anyway, but Madhav Das was a great devotee. And he said, nothing goes with you, this all will remain here. But if you do give something for God, that will be your punya. But she did not hear it. But in the night, she had a dream that 2 ferocious people wanted to grab him, that your time of death has come. So she wanted to take all her belongings. Okay, now I forgot to tell one thing. So when that Madhav Das asked, so what she did, she was making a furnace, a small furnace. So that little cloth with mud, etc., she threw at that Madhav Das. So he accepted it. He said everything has its meaning. So he accepted it and went back. And he cooked and he thought, what should I do with this? Then he remembered that God said he'll come in the evening. So he washed it and made some wicks. And with that he lighted. So because of that, though that donation was not willing and it was neglecting, but that worked. And in the night when she dreamt a ferocious dream, and she could understand that nothing belongs to her. And the next day she thought that I must apologize, and that happened. So, even if, what is the question?
So the thing is that, and like, she asks that, how can we remember at all times? Because many people only talk about worldly things and then they even flatter us.
So attitudinal correction means we are to think that God, I am interacting with God, whatever one is. Maybe one will try to harm you, but not to be affected by that. Rather, you are to be good. One has to be good. And interacting that God has reason why that man that God in that form of man is interacting and abusing me or trying to do me harm. Not to worry about it. Everything has its meaning. This world is a great gymnasium. We have come here to strengthen and build our muscles. The world will remain as it is, but with this exercise we can lift ourselves. Anyway, that Madhav Das also had to learn a lesson that also was there, because he was fastidious about offering the best thing, but what God wanted or wants is whatever simple thing we do with devotion, that is important. Yes?
A few minutes ago you said Sri Ramakrishna has infinite knowledge. What is that? What does infinite knowledge mean?
Not like our knowledge. Sarvagya Sarvavit. When Brahmavit Brahmaiva Bhavati. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. That what happens? Sarvagya. He knows everything in general and he knows everything is in particular. So it is like this. Whatever you dreamt, if it is vivid dream, you can understand each step. You can remember each step of that dream. So he, while experiencing this truth, he goes through the whole gamut of experiences. So nothing is beyond that. So will he be able to repair a machine? If he concentrates, yes, but he won't concentrate. When a microscope was brought in front of Sri Ramakrishna, he could not see through because he had to bring his mind back and put through the microscope. But his mind is totally drawn. But if he tries, yes, because everything is like glass case in front of him. Sarvagya Sarvavit. He is knower in general, he is knower in particular.
Thank you.
So we'll say our prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tassat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you very much. Thank you. Namaskar.
Maharaj.
Namaste. Namaste.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaskar. Jai Ma. Thank you.
Thanks for having us in person, Swami.
Eh?
Thanks for having us in person.
Yes, that's good.
I think we found out who iPhone was.
Yes. Because somebody, there's a thing, I literally said somebody joined the iPhone, so please.
You said I'm supposed to not blow it. Ooh.
Use your fingers.
And make sure not to smack it. Like the actual.
Here you go.
All right. We're all set. Job done for today.
And I'm gonna just leave the laptop.